parents came to the United States in the 1950s and leaving their families. I mean, my mother was number 7 out of 9 and my father was number 9 out of 11. And they didn't know each other. My mother, I asked her, I said, how could you leave? You didn't know anyone here. Yes, you had, distant aunt that worked for the priest in Philadelphia, but, how could you do that, leaving your family? And she said, Mary, I had 2 choices in my life. I could stay in Ireland and marry the guy on the next farm, or I could go to the United States. She goes, and I didn't like the guy on the next farm. So, she goes, really, I didn't have much of a choice. So she actually took a ocean liner that was a sister ship of the Titanic over here. It was the Britannia. And she told me the story of how drifting in the ocean. It was in November, around Thanksgiving, when she was coming over. And they drifted for 3 days without any power. She goes, it was not a fun place, and we don't make the poor woman watch Titanic, because she goes, I wasn't on the first deck. I was down the bottom. But when she got here, she went to Philadelphia, she worked at the Acme and the deli counter, met my father at the Irish Center at a dance. My father left Ireland when he was 17. Number 9 out of 11, the farm was already gone. So he and his brother just went over to London. He actually met a wonderful person, took an interest in him, and taught him how to be a carpenter. And he and his brother were sitting around and they're like, okay, done with London, what do we do now? They literally flipped a coin whether they were going to go to Australia or the United States. And thank God it landed heads, or whatever won, because that's where he met my mother in Philadelphia. And worked hard. I mean, my parents never missed a double shift. That's what they did, because they had 4 children. I'm the oldest of 4. And sent us always to Catholic schools, and they really went out of their way to do that. I mean, I was fortunate enough to come to Mount St. Mary's. My youngest sister also graduated from Mount St. Mary's. Then, I got a chance to work on Capitol Hill. And I'll be honest with you, my parents were Irish Catholic. They came here in 1950, so the Kennedys were gone. And they were Irish Catholic Democrats. And I got a job on the Hill with this guy named Joe Biden. I was his receptionist. Then I married my sweetheart from Mount St. Mary's and had the opportunity to stay home while my kids were young. And I did that, always knowing that I would go back to work at some point. But I talked John into, okay, I'm going to law school. So I got an opportunity to go to law school, went down to Catholic U in Washington, D.C. And frankly, when it was a snow day for my kids, it wasn't a snow day for me. So if you ask the dean of the law school now, she'll say, I remember when you dragged those 3 kids into class with you and put them up on the top of the auditorium and sat through commercial transactions. But it was a great opportunity. I was very fortunate. Came out, ran for office in Montgomery County. Did not win, but I went to work of counsel at a law firm in Montgomery County. And then I got a call from Governor Ehrlich to come and work in Annapolis with him. And I got to go down and be the Deputy Secretary of State and then the Secretary of State. And during this whole endeavor, I got to meet Alex. He reminds me a lot of Governor Ehrlich. They really care. They're great legislators, they're great husbands, they're great fathers, and they really care about the state of Maryland, which is why Governor Ehrlich is running again. This is not an easy decision to make. I mean, you put your life back out on the line, and these races can get very ugly. But he believes in this state, and it's going down the wrong direction right now, so he's going to put it back on track. And sometimes people are like, politics, they're all the same, politicians, they don't matter. Well, Governor Ehrlich asked me to run with him as his lieutenant governor, and the first day we went out and we started in Montgomery County and announced there with my family around, and then we went to Baltimore to a charter school, which I have to tell you was one of the most momentous occasions of my life. That this charter school, in one of the worst areas in Baltimore, we saw these young men, it was all male, young men in their blue blazers from the direst of circumstances, standing up and telling us that they wanted to be entrepreneurs, that they wanted to be lawyers, that they wanted to be doctors. And you know what? They actually had a chance of doing it. They went to school from 7 in the morning until 7 at night, and they loved it. The expectations were very high, and they didn't mind, because they knew that the time that they were putting in, they were going to get something out of it. And that school would not be there but for Governor Ehrlich and pushing through that charter school bill to give families the opportunity in places like Baltimore City to let their children learn and get a world-class education. We need those choices, and that's what politicians do. That's, you know, people say things, but when they run for things like this, it's very important. And Alex and I, he came to me, and I was Secretary of State, and I had heard about this legislation in the state of Washington, and we got together. Legislative Services had put this onerous amount of money that it would take, and they kept shooting it down. It's called the Address Confidentiality Program. We named it, it's Maryland's Safe at Home. And women who suffer stalking, domestic violence, no, it's not just women, it's families. They're able to feel safe. As Sam Reed, the Secretary of State in Washington, said, this protects more women from a gun than a protective order does, because they can't find you. A 250-foot protective order doesn't stop that. And one of the Secretaries of State said he knew it's great to be transparent, but he had one incident where he was in Colorado, that this woman, it was a bad custody dispute, very bad. And her ex-husband was able to, after they shut the whole case down and they gave her full custody and she was going back, she didn't think he knew where she was and she was going to be safe and start living her life. He walked into the clerk's office, got her address, took his gun, and went there that night and killed her. Just because she was trying to do the right thing. And those are those transparency laws. What this bill and this legislation did was to take women and people who were being harassed, their names off of public rolls, and they had the Office of the Secretary of State's address. And they had a card where they could go in, they could register to vote, they could get a driver's license, they could pay taxes, do everything without the fear of being found out. And after this bill, I we got a call that night, October 1st, when it went into effect at the Secretary of State's office. A woman asking how she could do this, and that she needed to do it. She was moving to Maryland. And I actually went to talk to, 2 weeks later, a group in Prince George's County. It's 400 women talking about domestic violence. And afterwards, I was describing the bill. I stepped down, and there is this beautiful woman in this Muslim outfit. And she walked up to me and she said, I just want you to know, tell Governor Ehrlich, thank you, thank you, thank you. She goes, I carry my card from Washington State around all the time. And then she looked at me and she goes, you don't know who I am, do you? And I said, no, I'm sorry. She goes, I'm Mildred Muhammad. My husband was the sniper.
Oh my God.
And to this day, she still carries that card around. Unfortunately, one of her relatives told him, as he was harassing, where she went here in Maryland, and he followed her. And we didn't have that program. So he found her. And look what happened. 17 people died because of it. So those are the things that we can do. But we have to get Governor Ehrlich in. We have to get Senator Mooney in. And thank you very much for coming out. I'm not going to take a whole lot of your time now, but we needed you in 2002 to clean up the mess from Paris Glendenning, and we needed Governor Ehrlich. And 2006 was a very hard year. And unfortunately, look at what we're looking at. We need Governor Ehrlich and Senator Mooney to go back down to Annapolis and clean up the mess again and put us back on the right track. So thank you very much for coming out tonight.